Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into something intense. We've got a
Yeah.
stack of sources here looking into the world of elite smoke jumpers, specifically the ones based out of Missoula, Montana, a pretty legendary spot.
Right. And our goal here really is to piece together what these accounts tell us. Because it's more than just, a job description. We're looking at a culture built on, frankly, almost unbelievable physical effort, a whole specialized language just for survival, and maybe most importantly, the really high-stakes, volatile relationships inside these units where trust is everything, literally everything.
Exactly, that volatility. Because the job demands total cooperation. I mean, your life is right there depending on the person next to you when you jump into a fire. But what the sources show is that pressure. It can crack those bonds. It leads to some dark places, sabotage, tragedy, even violence within the ranks.
It's this incredible paradox, professionally speaking. They have to be this perfect oiled machine. But they're also dealing with some really raw, intense human stuff under the surface, under the helmets.
Okay, so let's dig into that culture. And you really have to start with the physical side of things, the rookie training.
Yeah.
I saw it described as summer camp for the masochists.
Yeah.
Which kind of says it all. What did you find about just the sheer fitness required?
Well, what's really striking is that fitness isn't just like a baseline requirement. It's almost a form of currency within the group. A moral thing, almost. You've got the PT test just to qualify extreme standards for running, sit-ups, pull-ups. But it's not just about getting in. We see examples like Tree, a jumper who's 54, still making the time, still hitting the marks. That dedication, it's woven right into the crew's identity, their trust system.
It sets that bar incredibly high right from day one. So if you're a rookie, it's not just a test. It's like entering a forge. They talk about carrying an 85-pound pack for 3 miles. That's not just tough. It's damaging, potentially.
Oh, absolutely. And it's completely deliberate. They're making you feel the weight of the gear you'll actually jump with. And beyond just the hiking, the sources detail some grueling technical stuff, like felling big trees with these huge old-school crosscut saws. That takes more than just muscle. It's about teamwork, rhythm, precision, under pressure.
And then there's the landing practice, the name they have for the training device, the slamulator. I love that.
It's perfect, isn't it? It does exactly what it says. It's built just to mimic that incredibly jarring impact of hitting the ground under a parachute. The kind that just rattles your bones, your joints, everything. Rookies take some serious hits learning how to roll with it, absorb it. It's brutal physically, but it's what they need to do to land safely and then, immediately get to work on the ground.
Yeah, and there's this quote that really captures that mindset, that pain tolerance. If you don't bleed, how do they know you've been there? It's like this badge of honor, written in sweat and apparently blood.
It really speaks to the kind of psychological contract they're signing up for. Pain proves you belong. Enduring the grind builds that trust. And that complete dedication is what makes this so much more than just a job. It's this commitment to facing down the impossible, really.
So once they've proven they can take the physical punishment, they face the real test. Jumping into an active fire. Let's talk about the sheer precision that takes.
Yeah, this is where it gets incredibly technical. It's this mix of technology and just raw nerve. When they're on the jump run, the spotter is crucial. They're shouting out details constantly. Jump altitude, often 3,000 feet. But it's not just height. They're calling out wind drift, like 300 yards of drift. That tells the jumper how far sideways the wind's going to push them.
How do they even manage that? With the wind shifting all the time. Seems almost impossible to calculate perfectly.
It's the biggest danger, hands down. You're constantly fighting turbulence, dealing with wind that, like one source said, has a bite to it. That wind is actively trying to push the chute around, maybe into trees or, worst case, right into the heat rising off the fire itself. So precision means constant adjustments, knowing a small mistake could spin you right out, which is actually something the jumper Rowan sees happen to her partner, Jim.
And what about the feeling, that free fall, the descent? The sources had some really vivid descriptions. One mentioned the twist of exhilaration and fear.
Yes, that's sort of the standard professional take. But then another jumper put it, well, a bit more bluntly, described the rush as, and this is a direct quote, like hot screaming sex with a beautiful woman.
Wow, okay. That's not just adrenaline talking. That's something else entirely. Pushing right to the edge of life itself. It tells you everything about the psychological stakes, doesn't it? That ultimate high.
It really is. It's the closest they get to just cheating death, moment by moment. And that extreme feeling, that sensory overload, defines their whole emotional landscape. But then, boom, they land. That high cuts off. And the job instantly shifts. Now it's ground combat.
Right, they're not just firefighters dropped in. They immediately become the ones in charge, coordinating the whole thing, fire bosses.
Exactly. Instant transition. Aerial specialist 1 second, field commanders the next, fire bosses. They're directing crews coming in, deploying those specialized tools. The sources really highlight the Pulaski, that iconic tool, half-axe, half-hoe. It's the fundamental tool for digging fire lines, scraping the earth down to mineral soil to starve the fire of fuel.
So they're making these critical tactical calls in real time, trying to contain something that feels alive and wants to overrun them.
Absolutely. Containment, suppression, that's the game. And sometimes they use really high-risk tactics like setting backfires. They deliberately light smaller, controlled fires that burn towards the main wildfire. The idea is to burn out the fuel in front of the main fire, basically forcing the big fire to, as one source put it, fold her back in on herself. It's incredibly dangerous, requires immense skill and confidence.
And dealing with that level of danger, it makes sense they start to personify the fire itself, right? Like it's an actual enemy.
Oh, constantly. You see it referred to as a monster, a dragon. They use phrases like, the bitch tried to eat us. Or they talk about the psychological wear and tear as dragon fever. It shows they see it as more than just, a natural event. It's a battle, an adversary you have to respect, but ultimately beat.
And that shared battle, fighting this terrifying common enemy, that seems to be what builds those incredibly tight bonds we see later. Being in that extreme pressure cooker together, like a unit again, all but willing the rest to make it. But that same intensity, it just ramps up all the internal stuff too, conflicts, relationships. Everything feels dialed up to 11.
Totally amplified. Every little interaction carries more weight. You see it clearly in the dynamic between Rowan the Swede, she's known for being tough, super competent, and Gull, the hotshot they call fast feet. He also gets called Shakespeare because his banter, his flirting, is apparently quite elaborate.
Yeah, their whole relationship seems built on this foundation of mutual respect for each other's skills, but it comes out as this intense flirtation. Rowan's known for her sexy saloon girl laugh, apparently. And Gull, well, calling her the end of the goddamn rainbow after a jump is pretty poetic, you have to admit.
It's definitely intense, and it raises this really interesting question that the sources touch on. Is that powerful attraction mainly because of the zip? The shared danger. Would that connection even be there if they weren't constantly facing death side by side? That question kind of hangs in the air right before everything starts to fall apart with the death of one of their own, Jim Brainerd.
Ah, Jim's death. An accident, but it seems to be the catalyst for the units.
Well, it's psychological breakdown. Who becomes the focus of all that initial grief and anger?
It zeroes in almost immediately on Dolly. She was Jim's ex-girlfriend, and the mother of a child Jim apparently fathered. Her grief turns, well, vengeful. Pretty quickly, she starts acting out, vandalizing Rowan's room with pig's blood, trashing the ready room at the base. It's like the first real sign that this external personal chaos is starting to infect their professional space, their sanctuary. But it doesn't just stop with vandalism, does it? Things escalate.
Yeah.
Brutally. Dolly ends up murdered, along with this suspicious local character, Reverend Latterly. And their bodies are found burned in wildfires.
Yeah, the initial suspicion, maybe naturally, falls on Dolly's father, Leo Brakeman. He's grieving, he's angry, and sources mention his distinctive rifle was linked to a later shooting. But the actual truth, it turns out to be much, much closer to home, and far more shocking.
This is where that internal betrayal just becomes devastating. The real killer, the one responsible for the murders and, crucially, for messing with the jump equipment. Stripping valves on pumps, doctoring parachutes used on later jumps. It was Matt Brainerd, Jim's own brother.
The absolute ultimate violation of trust within that unit. Matt apparently confessed in a journal they found later. His motive was complicated, dark. He wrote that he felt like all of us killed Jim. Like Jim's accident was somehow a collective failure of the unit, a failure of their code. So rigging the gear, the chutes, the pumps. It wasn't targeted revenge against one person. It was his twisted way of imposing fate and destiny, as he put it, giving everyone the same random chance of death that he felt had taken his brother.
Sabotaging the very things they rely on for survival. The gear Matt himself was supposed to maintain and protect. It's chilling that the place they expected absolute control and safety became the source of this deadly betrayal. It really shows how volatile things can get when that core trust breaks down from the inside.
Yeah. So what this whole deep dive shows us, I think, is that the smoke jumper's life is just this profound paradox. They're aiming for total professional control over their bodies, their equipment, the fire line itself. But they're constantly pushed up against the absolute wildness of nature and, as we've seen, these really extreme, chaotic human emotions. That environment, that crucible, it doesn't just attract the physically tough. It becomes the perfect breeding ground for intense personal drama to really fester and explode.
And yet, through all of that internal turmoil, the murders, the sabotage, the messy relationships, the focus snaps right back to the mission the second that siren goes off. That professional focus seems to override everything else, almost terrifyingly so, because focusing on the fire is the only way they survive. It's an incredible psychological defense mechanism, isn't it? The sources mention again and again how things like the murders, the sabotage, they get treated almost like a bump in the road compared to the urgent call of the fire, which leaves you with a pretty heavy question to think about. What does it take, psychologically, professionally, for human life and death, even murder, to become secondary to the mission? And maybe, how do people manage to build real, lasting connections in a world that demands that kind of immediate, almost sacrificial focus on the job?
Maybe the answer is somewhere in that tension itself. You see Gull trying to navigate it, trying to express something deeper to Rowan amidst all the chaos, saying, I've fallen pretty deep in here to care with you. We'll go with that for now because I think it's more, and that's a lot to figure out. Finding space for more, even when the fire is always calling.